So now I'm just going to introduce our speaker for tonight. So Don Millar is the president of the London Electric Vehicle Association, which has been in operation since 2015. He is also one of the 3 founding members, and he's been driving electric cars for 13 years. So he's definitely an expert with a lot of firsthand experience. He was born and raised in London, and prior to his retirement in 2020, he worked for 36 years as a chiropractic sports specialist at London Sports Chiropractic, which he founded. So ladies and gentlemen, I give you Don Millar.
Thanks very much, Kelsey. Okay, so welcome everybody to our What You Need to Know About Electric Vehicles. I'm just going to share my screen here, and I am the president of the London Electric Vehicle Association. Our mission is to promote and advocate the use of electric vehicles as a cleaner mode of transportation, and to support EV owners and enthusiasts, and to educate all parties in the advantages of EV usage. And we, for instance, we have shows of electric cars. On the left, you'll see a show that was at Wortley Road Auto Care, and the other one is a show on the right is a show that we had at Thamesford, the Thamesford Fair. All right, I've been driving electric for 13 years. For 6 years, I drove a Toyota Prius hybrid, which you see here on the left. And for another year, I drove a 2014 Smart for 2 electric vehicle. So the Prius was a hybrid, electric and gas, and I went all electric in 2014, and I've been driving all electric ever since. So then I went from the Smart for 2 to a 2015 Kia Soul EV, and I had that for 3 years. Now the range of the Smart for 2 was about 100 kilometers. The range of the Kia Soul was about 150 kilometers. The range of the Chevy Bolt is about 360 kilometers. So you can see that there's a big difference. It's more than double the range of the Kia Soul EV. And so that's one of the reasons why I moved up. It's also one of the reasons why electric vehicles depreciate more quickly than other vehicles, because things are changing so fast and become outdated. My future car is a Tesla Model Y. It has a 525 kilometer range. It has a top end of 217 kilometers an hour. I don't know why I would ever need that, but that's what it has. And it has a 5-second 0 to 100 kilometer acceleration. So why would we use an EV? Well, first of all, you would save money. The average Canadian driver can save as much as $2,000 a year on fuel alone. Secondly, reduce greenhouse gas emissions. The average Canadian driver can reduce their greenhouse gas emissions by as much as 90% by switching to an electric vehicle. Third is their purchasing incentives. Okay, the government has purchasing incentives that are available for electric vehicles and for charging stations. Okay, I'm going to show some YouTube videos now. So this is called Electric Vehicles. How much do you know?
Welcome to the evolving world of energy.
Hi, I'm Professor Energy. This is a brand new electric vehicle, Eve.
Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone.
You may have heard some recent buzz around electric vehicles. Once a niche car option, EV sales have been steadily increasing over the past decade. In fact, Americans purchased 10 times more electric vehicles last year than they did in 2011.
Let's take a ride so you can see what this phenomenon is all about.
We're cruising now. One thing a lot of people don't know about EVs is they accelerate much faster than gas-powered cars due to the instant torque from the electric motor. Hey Vince, meet Eve. She's 3 times more energy efficient than a gas-powered car, and she's gonna save me around $1,000 this year on fuel costs. And here is what's really amazing. You can now find tons of different options on the market, from Chevy, Nissan, and many others. And while EVs can sometimes have a higher sticker price, the federal government and some states offer incentives and tax credits to help people buy them. Not to mention HOV, toll road, and parking space access perks. Eve, look at some of your friends.
Don't tell Vince, but another big benefit to owning an EV like me is that we're more affordable to maintain because we have fewer moving parts to break down, making us much more reliable. I also don't require oil changes. Say goodbye to long waits at the mechanic. Check out my torque, Vince.
If you're interested in checking out one for yourself, you can find purchasing info incentives on your electric utilities website. Utilities see support of EVs as a big priority. There are also websites that help customers compare and test drive different models of electric vehicles. Hey Melissa, meet Eve.
Nice ride. Running out of juice already?
Nope, we just need a quick snack.
A common question about electric vehicles is, what if you run out of battery power in the middle of nowhere? It's a good question, but the good news is newer EV models have an increased average range of over 200 miles, and most Americans, even those living in more rural areas, drive only between 35 and 50 miles per day, and many electricity providers offer low-rate plans for EV drivers.
To charge up on the cheap. The number of charging stations is also growing fast. In most states, there are incentives for building charging stations at businesses, and utilities are also making major investments.
In fact, the number of charging outlets nationwide has more than tripled in the last 6 years, and if you need a charge, you can use one of the many mobile apps to easily find a nearby station.
Of course, one of the biggest reasons many drivers go electric is for the environment. Gas-powered vehicles emit air pollutions that contribute to smog, haze, and health problems, as well as greenhouse gases that contribute to global warming.
In fact, researchers estimate that if you drive the same number of miles, an EV will result in 2.5 times less emissions.
And as more electricity is generated from renewable resources like wind and solar, annual emissions for an EV will approach almost zero. Like in Vermont, where 89% of electricity comes from low-carbon sources. Looks like everyone is joining the electric vehicle parade. Just like the innovations that made the Model T more popular than horse-drawn carriages. Today's new, more affordable and easy to maintain electric vehicles are quickly becoming a smart and economic choice for any driver who wants to join the wave of the future. For more information, check out the guidebook.
All right.
We'll just make sure.
Yeah, make sure the audio works.
Why is going electric beneficial?
Perfect.
When you hear about modern electrification, it's about swapping out one energy source, usually natural gas or other fossil fuels, for something that's powered by cleaner electricity. Switching to electric can reduce overall energy use with more efficient products, allow you to utilize a cheaper energy source, or both, potentially saving you thousands of dollars over the life of your investment. For example, electric vehicles cost about half as much to drive compared to gas-powered vehicles. Electric technologies can improve your quality of life by offering more precision, more stability, and additional safety features. And electrification better positions society to address climate change and reduce greenhouse gas emissions by utilizing more low or no carbon energy sources. Our electricity grid is getting cleaner every day as more and more renewable energy replaces fossil fuels. By adding smart home technology, your transition to electrification can be even more efficient and affordable. As we push for a cleaner, more efficient tomorrow, beneficial electrification is helping to power our journey. To learn more about how and what you can electrify, visit whatissmartenergy.org.
Okay, and then next one.
Why do your energy bills go up in the summer and winter months?
Okay.
Yeah, that should work if you just try it again. Share screen, and then if you can select your PowerPoint.
Okay. All right. So electric vehicles are the ride of the future. Okay, the number of electric vehicles is rising. They're 3 times more energy efficient than gas-powered vehicles. There's a difference of about $1,000 in the US in the price per year of operating them. In Canada, it's closer to $2,000. There are a number of charging stations out there, more than you probably realize, and there are apps that can show you where they are. Okay, now here's the perks. In the US, they have a few more perks than we do. They have a federal tax credit, which we have too, but ours is $5,000 instead of $7,500. And you have HOV lane access. but there's no free access to toll roads or free parking or discount on registration. Okay, your grandchildren will thank you. The emissions of gasoline vehicles are 11,435 pounds, and the emissions of electric vehicles are 4,555 pounds, and I think that's per year. Okay, so there are many different options for purchasing electric vehicles. So the best sellers are Tesla, Nissan, Chevrolet, and I would say now, then also I would include Kia and Hyundai. Okay, Volvo is fairly new to electric vehicles. Jaguar has had electric vehicles for a couple of years. Land Rover is fairly new to electric vehicles. Okay, the newer models have longer ranges, so 200 miles or 320 kilometers. And so most people drive anywhere from 50 to 80 kilometers a day. And so that's plenty enough to cover their needs. So Plug and Drive is a Canadian organization. Its offices are in Toronto, and they are basically aimed to help people to learn more about electric vehicles and to purchase electric vehicles. So this is their website. It's a great wealth of information. It has a list of all the cars available in Canada, and also it has you can buy an electric car charging station there for your car if you buy a new car. It has a lot of information about electric vehicles. So again, as we mentioned before, electric cars save you money, about $2,000 a year. They reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So in Ontario, our power is 60% derived from nuclear, 24% from water, that's hydroelectric, 6% from wind, 1% from solar, and 10% from fossil fuels. So that varies from hour to hour, by the way. The amount from fossil fuels varies especially because they use gas, natural gas operated turbines as the filler. So if they need more, they put more other gas operations. And if they've got plenty from the nuclear and water and wind, then the gas plants are shut down. Okay, so that does vary a little bit. Electric cars qualify for incentives. There's two kinds of incentives. One is the $5,000 government incentive, and the other is PlugShare has a $1,000 incentive for used electric cars. And all you have to do is to take their course, which you can take online, called EV 101, and they will give you a $1,000 rebate. And you don't have to do the course before you buy the car, because sometimes the car comes up and you just, you have to buy it or somebody else will buy it. So you can do it after as well. Okay, and they have also information on frequent asked questions, electric vehicles available in Canada, and they have the Electric Vehicle Discovery Center. So that's in Toronto, and they have one of most of the electric vehicles that are available in Canada. So if the dealer in London doesn't have the car that you want to test drive, then you should check the Electric Vehicle Discovery Center in Toronto. They may very well have one. You can make an appointment to drive those cars. Now, I don't think that this came up when we first opened it up, but yeah, it did. Okay, they are closed right now due to COVID, okay, because Toronto is still in lockdown. When Toronto comes out of lockdown, they will open up again, and you can drive electric cars there. Okay, and they have pretty well all the brands, and those cars are donated by the manufacturers. Okay, so that is Plug and Drive. So very important for people who are new to electric vehicles. Here's a pictorial history of electric vehicles. Now, the first picture is going to be a little bit of a shock to most people. The first electric vehicle was produced in 1832 in Scotland. And they took a horse-drawn carriage and they put an electric motor and batteries in it. It's 1832. So don't let anybody tell you that electric vehicles are new or the new guy on the block. The next one I put in because it's a Canadian car, okay? The picture is outside of a home in Hull, Quebec. This is 1913. In 1913, the number of electric vehicles was just about equal to the number of gas vehicles. That was the pinnacle of electric vehicles, and they went downhill after that because gas gained predominance, primarily because you could go further on them and it didn't have to weigh as long charge them. Now, electric vehicles were considered a lady's vehicle at the time because you didn't have to turn a crank to start them. And those cranks could be pretty cantankerous at times in the old gas cars before they had electric starters. All right, let's skip way ahead to 1971. The NASA lunar rover was an electric vehicle. And they had to develop it, and it had all the same problems of development, range and battery size and everything else in charging that we have today in our electric vehicles. Only they were a few miles away and they couldn't really get much help. So they had to plan everything in advance. And if anybody knows anything about the lunar rovers, it was first tested in the Sudbury area because the topography is very close to what it's like on the moon. In 1996, General Motors came out with the EV1. For its day, it was a very nicely streamlined car. It was only a two-seater. It had lead-acid batteries, and GM decided to scrap their program in 1999. For some reason, it didn't fit in with their mandate for their corporation. Then we have another little gap to 1997. Okay, the Toyota Prius hybrid was first put out in 1997. They've had, I think, 4 now versions of it. I had the second version. And the fourth version now, I think, is somewhere around 3.5 liters per 100 kilometers, something like that. They pretty well got the hybrid thing down pat, but they haven't really done much with electric vehicles. Oh, by the way, the Toyota Prius was nickel metal hydride battery. So it was a little bit further advanced than the lead acid batteries. Now the EV1. And so it had nickel metal hydride batteries. And the ushering in of the new era was the Tesla Roadster. It had lithium-ion batteries. The lithium-ion batteries were borrowed from laptops. It had many, many lithium-ion batteries. They were little batteries, a little bit bigger than a AA, and it had thousands of them, probably about 4,000 or 5,000. That was produced from 2008 to 2012. Now, what happened during that time between 2008, and it was very expensive, by the way, it's about $150,000. Between 2008 and 2012, the cost of electric batteries dropped by about 50%. So in 4 years, dropped about 50%. That paved the way for modern lithium-ion batteries. So then came the Nissan Leaf battery electric vehicle in 2012. Okay, lithium-ion batteries. The Chevy Volt, which was a electric vehicle that had a gasoline range extender. So it was basically a hybrid. We plugged in, and they produced those from 2012 to 2019. The next one was a Tesla Model S, and this really ushered in the modern era of luxury electric vehicles. It currently has a range of 663 kilometers, which is about from London to Kingston. It has top speed of 250 kilometers an hour. Why it need to go that fast, I have no idea. And it has a mind-boggling acceleration of 3.2 seconds going 0 to 100 kilometers. If you've ever been in one, you would be pasted to your seat when they hit the accelerator. And the most modern electric vehicle, the one that has just come out, is the Ford Mustang Mach-E. Okay, this one was just delivered to Highbury Ford 2 weeks ago. I don't know if it's still available, but they have 2 more coming if anybody's interested. And so this is the most recent introduction to the electric vehicle market. Now, in 2015, we also had a little diversion. We had the diversion into the hydrogen fuel cell area. The most best known one was the Toyota Mirai, and it is still being produced, but on very small numbers because basically nobody wants them. They use hydrogen combustion to generate electricity, and the electricity is used to run an electric motor. The hydrogen is the most environmentally friendly of all the combustion fuels, as only water comes out the tailpipe, nothing toxic and no CO2. However, the cars are too expensive to produce, and hydrogen fuel is also expensive to produce and not environmentally friendly, as it needs electricity in production. So the question is asked, why not just use electric cars? Hydrogen filling stations are also very expensive to build, and the fuel is under extremely high pressure, causing safety concerns for the neighbors of the filling stations. So, how many electric vehicles are there in London, Ontario? I have an answer. So you have 4,032, and that represents about 1.4% of all the vehicles in London. And this comes from Jamie Skimming of the City of London. Okay, you'll see some, in the table here, you'll see some increases. Certainly the last 3 years, there has been a 23%, 22 or 23% increase yearly in the number of electric vehicles. What electric vehicles are available in Canada today? So I'm going to shrink this down. I have another screen to show. So we have the VW e-Golf, which are available here in London, the Mini Cooper SE3, we have the Hyundai Ioniq, we have the Nissan Leaf, Kia Soul EV, the Chevy Bolt EV, which is what I'm driving right now, the Kia Niro EV, Nissan Leaf S Plus, the Hyundai Kona, the BMW i3, Tesla Model 3, Kia Soul EV Limited, Ford Mustang Mach-E, Tesla Cybertruck. You can order them, but you can't. But they haven't been delivered yet. They'll be delivered at the end of this year. VW ID4, same thing. You can order them, but they haven't been. They don't have deliveries yet. And you'll get deliveries in them after September. Tesla Model 3 long range, Volvo XC Recharge, Nissan Ariya, Tesla Model Y, which is what I have ordered. I'm coming in May 1st. Polestar 2, available in Toronto at the Polestar store. Nissan Ariya. Rivian R1T, Audi e-tron Quattro. The Audi e-tron Quattro is available here in London. And Rivian R1S Explorer. Lucid Air. Jaguar I-Pace is also, as I believe, is available here in London. Audi e-tron Sportback, which is also available here in London. Tesla Model S and X. And by the way, most of the Teslas are about a 3 or 4 week delivery right now. So if you're interested in buying one, that's about how long you have to wait. Porsche Taycan, GM Hummer EV, the Porsche Taycan Turbo, and if you really have a lot of money burning your pocket, a hole in your pocket, we have the Lucid Air Dream Edition for $224,000. So those are the vehicles that are available currently in Canada. Nomenclature for electric vehicles. So we have hybrid, plug-in hybrid, or PHEV, and battery electric. Those are the 3 types. A hybrid has no plug. It switches back and forth between gas and electric. It combines a conventional gas engine and an electric propulsion system to achieve better fuel economy. The battery is recharged by the generators when it brakes and when it goes downhill. So it has regenerative braking, and that's where it gets its electricity from. It does not have a plug. A plug-in hybrid is also a mix of gas and electric, but it does have a plug and a little bit bigger battery. And the advantages is that if you run out of electricity, you can always use the gas engine to get to your destination. And a battery electric vehicle is all electric, all the time, no gas. It's an electric vehicle that uses electricity from its battery packs as its only source of energy. Today, there are 34 battery electric vehicles available in Canada. I just showed you those. And there are all electric pickup trucks, transport trucks, buses, boats, planes, and ferry boats being developed now. Electric vehicle chargers. So we have to charge these vehicles. Okay, so it's a device that communicates with your car to determine what charging rate your car is designed for, then turns on a switch to supply the right amount of electricity. There are 2 types, alternating current or AC and direct current DC. Most people charge to 90% of their charging at home, and only 10% of their charging is done on the road. So your weekly needs are going to be met by your home charger, but occasionally you may want to go on the road and use a public charger. So the first type then is a level 1 charger. I call it the emergency charger. It comes with your car. It works on a standard 110 volt household outlet. It supplies alternating current at 1.3 kilowatts. It takes about 30 hours or 1.25 days to charge a 60 kilowatt battery, and has a J72 connector. Now, the biggest use of this for most people is if they get stranded, or if they're visiting a friend at a cottage and they don't have a 240 volt outlet, or they don't have a charging station nearby. You can plug in to their exterior outlet and it will charge your car in a day and a quarter. So if you're there for the whole weekend, no problem. You'll leave with a full battery at the end of the weekend. The next one is a level 2 home charger. So it uses a 220 volt stove plug, supplies alternating current at 7 kilowatts. It takes 5 hours to charge a 60 kilowatt hour battery, and it has a J1772 connector. So now we've gone from 1.5 kilowatts to 7 kilowatts. We've gone from a day and a quarter now to 5 hours for charging. This is the same type of charger, but it's a public charger, and it has a payment system. That's the only difference. Level 2. The next level is level 3. They're also known as DC quick chargers. They provide direct current. So the charger is actually inside the charging station instead of inside your car. It sends direct current to your car and it goes directly to your battery. Your battery charger is not used in this operation. It puts out 50 kilowatts. Okay, so we went from 1.5 kilowatts to 7 kilowatts to 50 kilowatts. Quite a big jump. Okay, your average home electrical panel has about 10 kilowatts. So it puts out the electrical equivalent of 5 homes. It takes about an hour to charge your car. And it has 2 types of connectors, CHAdeMO and CCS combo. Okay, different types of brands of cars have different types of connectors. It also has a payment system built in that works through a cell phone app. The next ones I call super fast chargers. These are about 2 to 6 times as fast as DC fast chargers. Okay, so again, for comparison, they have 125 to 300 kilowatts instead of 50. And your average home has about 10 kilowatts. So this is equivalent of about 13 to 30 homes electric panel. It takes 10 to 30 minutes to charge a 60 kilowatt hour battery. It has 2 types of connectors again, and it has a payment system built in that works through a cell phone app. The next type is a Tesla supercharger. Okay, it supplies direct current again, so it has the charger inside the unit of 125 to 250 kilowatts. Okay, again, for comparison, this is the equivalent of about 13 to 25 homes. It takes 10 to 30 minutes to charge a 60 kilowatt hour battery. It has only 1 type of connector, and that's the Tesla connector. So it only works with Tesla cars. It has an automatic payment system that reads the VIN number on the card electronically, and it bills your credit card automatically. You don't have to push a button or anything to start it. How many chargers are there in Canada? Okay, so as of last month, there were 15,617 EV chargers in Canada at 5,000 different stations. So an average of about 3 chargers per station. And there are 2,348 DC fast chargers. The approximate number of the chargers in London is about 100 EV chargers in total, at a total of about 50 stations. And we have 14 DC fast chargers, including the Tesla superchargers. Now, if you divide the number of public chargers by province, you'll see that Quebec has the most public chargers. So if you're going to do a trip to Quebec, you're pretty easy to find a place to charge. Ontario has the second most, BC, then Alberta, and so on down the road. The one thing you do want to notice on this list is that Newfoundland, the 5th one down, has 100 charging stations, but no level 3 stations. Okay, so that means that all of them are going to take about 5 hours to charge your car. So your best bet, if you are traveling to Newfoundland, is to try and charge your car overnight while you're at a motel. Winter charging. Winter charging is different than summer charging. It takes about 1.5 times as long to charge your car in the winter. This is due to the fact that you need to warm the battery first before you charge it. Now, this is my car at Masonville Mall. The charger at Masonville is right near between the theater and the CIBC, Bank of Commerce. And this is the level 2 charger. They have a level 2 and a level 3 charger there. On the left, you'll see what the plug looks like. It has 3 big holes and 2 small holes. The 3 big holes carry large amounts of electricity. The 2 small holes are for communications. When you plug it into your vehicle, which I'll show you in a second, like that, the charger says, "Are you a car?" And it says, "Yes, I'm a car." And it says, "How many kilowatts is your charger?" And it says 6.6, and it sends 6.6 kilowatts, or 7, as the case may be. Okay. You have a screen on the car that tells you how much charge there is in your battery. Okay. A lot of cars, they have it in percentage. Chevrolet has decided that the Bolt would be nicer to have it in graphic form. Okay. So each bar represents 5%. And so you have 4 groups of 5 for a total of 5%. 4 groups of 5% for a total of 100. This is level 3 charging, or DC quick charger. Now you see that there are 2 parts to this plug. The top part looks exactly the same as a level 2 charger. Okay, it has 3 electricity ports and 2 communicating ports. And in the bottom, there are 2 large ports. Okay, and those are the ports that they're used to carry the electricity to the car when you're DC fast charging. Okay, basically when you're fast charging, only the 2 communicating pins are used in the top plug, and the electricity comes in the bottom part of the plug. This is what the plug looks like on your car on the right. And my car has a little covering for the lower part of it in case you're not using it. If you're out in the snow or something and you're charging and you're only using the level 2, it keeps snow or moisture from getting into the charging pins of the level 3. So that's what it looks like when it's plugged in. And this is what the charger looks like. So if you want to look for one of these, they have one of these at the Canadian Tire at Wellington Road, just north of the 401. And they have one of these at Masonville Mall, flow chargers. There are different brands of chargers, just like there's different brands of gasoline stations. And this one is a flow. So that means you have to use the Flow app or a Flow tap card in order to activate the charging station. Electric vehicle battery terminology. There's a lot. Okay, so this is going to take a few minutes to go through all of this. I have 3 slides on this. So first of all, an electric vehicle battery, known as a traction battery, stores electrical energy in the form of chemical energy. The chemistry is lithium-ion batteries, so the electrons are stored in lithium ions. And they were originally developed for laptops. The capacity, most battery electric vehicles have a capacity of between 30 and 100 kilowatt hours. And the voltage is very high. It's higher than even your stove in your house. It's 250 to 450 volts. Okay. Energy density. So for electric aircraft, you want to make the batteries very light. And they're using what they call zinc air batteries. So they take zinc and they, when it's in its molten form, they whip it up and get air cells in it, and the air holds the electrons. For motorcycles, you want to make the batteries as small as possible. So they use lithium-ion batteries. So energy efficiency then, how much energy does it use? In warm weather, an EV with a 60 kilowatt hour battery will drive about 300 to 350 kilometers for an energy efficiency of about 20 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers. Battery pack costs. The cost of the battery pack makes up a significant part of the cost of the battery electric vehicle or hybrid electric vehicle, about 20%. By contrast, the drivetrain in a gas car makes up only about 10% of the cost of the car. The aim of current research is to get the cost of batteries down to below $100 per kilowatt hour. And battery packs cost between $5,000 and $15,000, approximately. And by the way, people always wonder what the cost is because they're thinking about what's it going to cost to replace them. It's very rare to have to replace a battery. Okay, so unless you've had the car 10 years or more, and they're warranted for 8 years, and it's very rare to have to replace an electric vehicle battery. There are a few that maybe approaching 10 years that might have to replace them, but that's about it. So how far can you go on a full charge? It varies from 150 kilometers to 663 kilometers. The Tesla Model S, with a range of 663 kilometers, is the longest range electric vehicle on the road today. There will be longer vehicles though, because especially transport trucks, which have extremely large batteries, will be able to go further. The usable battery range. So the usable battery range changes from summer to winter. They're just like your cell phone or laptop. If you run it down to the red line all the time, the battery will not last very long. However, electric car batteries cost a lot more to replace than cell phone batteries, so we want to try and take care of them. It's recommended to keep the battery in the range of 20% to 80% of full charge at all times, except just before a long trip when it's okay to charge to 100% as long as you're using the electricity right away. EV owners only charge their cars to 80% each night most of the time, and try not to go below 20% when driving. Therefore, an EV with a quoted range of 400 kilometers will only have a usable range, 20% to 80%, of 240 kilometers in the summer and 133 kilometers in the winter, because the cold weather decreases the range. The range decreases with age as well by about 1 to 5% per year. Now, therefore, for a daily commute of 100 kilometers, you will need a car that has a 400 kilometers of range, or 4 times your daily commute. However, we have an alternative. You can ask your employer to install level 2 chargers at work. Then you would only need a minimum of 200 kilometers of range in order to ensure you can make your 100-kilometer commute even in the winter. That would be 50 kilometers to work, charge at work, then 50 kilometers of range to get home. Obviously, a car with 200 kilometers of range will be a lot less expensive than one with 400 kilometers of range. Battery lifespan. Batteries are generally warranted for 8 years, but may last as long as from 10 to 25 years with proper care. Heating during quick charging in hot weather and charging batteries that are very cold are both hard on batteries. So having an efficient heating and cooling system for your traction battery is very important. Liquid cooling is far better than air cooling because it can carry the heat away more quickly, or it can warm the batteries more quickly in the winter. When EV battery packs lose 20 to 25% of their capacity, they are usually replaced. And the old batteries go to other uses, such as storage batteries for solar panels and wind generators. When the batteries are no longer useful for those 2 uses, they are recycled and used to make new batteries. So here's what it looks like then. The traction battery is underneath the floor pan of the car. On the left is a traction battery being removed from a car. It's on a scissors jack, and it's already down now about 6 inches from where it would normally sit. This is the same battery pack. It has a covering on it, so the covering has been removed so you can see what's inside. The batteries are in cells, and they're in groups of cells. You'll notice that on the left, there's a high side, and then in the middle is a lower part, and on the right, there's a high side. One of the reasons for this is that it's underneath the floor pan. So the high side on the left is underneath the driver's seats. The middle, lower, is the floor pan for the back seat, and the rear is underneath the rear seat of the car. Okay, so the far right. So that's why it's an unusual shape. The powertrain stack. When you open the lid, the front hood of an electric car, you're only going to see this part right here. You will not see any of this. So this has been removed from the car so you can see it all. Okay, and so here's the parts, the powertrain stack. We have the power delivery module, which is the upper part. We have the inverter, which is the middle part right here. We have the traction motor, which is the lowest part right here. And we have the gearbox, which is the part off to the right here. And note that there is no transmission in an electric vehicle. So we have a lot of terminology as well for electric motors and drivetrains. So the power delivery module receives high voltage DC power from the battery and relays it to the other components. It goes to the inverter for the traction motor, it goes to the air conditioner compressor, and it goes to the cabin heater. It contains 2 chargers. It contains a level 1 and a level 2 charger. It receives medium voltage AC power from the charging station and relays it through the onboard charger to both the traction battery and the 12-volt battery. During level 3 charging, It receives high voltage DC power this time from the charging station and relays it to the traction battery. It also receives high voltage DC power from the regenerative braking via the traction motor and the inverter and relays it to the battery. The inverter, the middle part, controls the speed and torque of the traction motor. It receives power from the traction battery via the power delivery module. And it receives power from, that's from above, okay? It receives power from below, from the traction motor during regenerative braking and relays it to the battery via the power delivery module. The traction motor. The traction motor is a three-phase alternating current magnet motor. Okay, alternating current motors are more efficient than DC motors. You would think it would be easier just to take the direct current from the battery and run it into a direct current motor. But unfortunately, the number of kilometers you would get on a charge would not be as much as if we invert it and use alternating current in the motor. Its windings receive their power from the inverter and turn it into rotational motion. It sends power to the inverter during regenerative braking. And for reverse gear, the polarity of the traction motor is reversed. There is no reverse gear on an electric car. The gearbox. Again, there is no transmission. There's only one gear in the reduction gearbox. It gears down the rotational motion from the motor and transmits it to the wheels. So let's look at this in a little bit more detail then. Here's our powertrain stack again on the left, and on the right we have removed the lid of the power delivery module. You will see on the top, this smaller black part here is the level 1 charger. The larger black part here is a level 2 charger, and then we have a lot of transfer contacts here to and from the battery. So that's the power delivery module. Now, you can see that below it is the inverter and below it is the motor. So we're going to take off the power delivery module now. We're going to look at the inverter. Now the inverter, true to its name, is turned upside down. Okay, so you can't see much when you remove the power delivery module. So we have to lift up the inverter and turn it on its side, and you'll see that all the electronic parts hang down inside it. Okay, and you'll see 3 copper parts here, and that's for the 3-phase motor. Okay, that's the delivery of alternating current to the 3-phase motor. So that is the inverter. The traction motor. Now, the traction motor shaft runs across. So we're still looking at this from the front of the car. The traction motor, its shaft runs across like this. And you can see the shaft, just the end of the shaft right here. When you look at the end of the shaft, which is right here, you can see the windings of the traction motor. So that is the traction motor. Now, here again is the traction motor over here, and attached to it is the gearbox. When we pull the gearbox off, this is what it looks like. We have the shaft of the motor goes in here, electric motor. We have one big gear and 2 small gears. And the reason we have 2 small gears, they both actually work off the same big gear. This one has a shaft that goes to the right wheel, and this one has a shaft that goes to the left wheel. Okay, it's a front wheel drive. Okay, and over here you can see that those are plugged because they didn't want to get any grease or any dirt in the shaft there. Okay, so that's where it comes out right there. Brakes terminology. Okay, so we have different brakes on an electric vehicle too. We have regenerative brakes. They use the traction motor to do most of the braking and in turn generate electricity, which is stored in the battery. Your gas car gives off energy from braking as heat and is lost to the atmosphere. So what happens is when you're stopping, most of your braking is done by the traction motor, produces electricity, goes into the battery, and uses that same electricity to start you up again. Electric cars also have disc brakes, but they are only used for about the last 100 feet of braking. Heating and cooling. Again, we have different heating and cooling than we have in a gas car because we don't have a manifold with lots of heat coming out of it to get heat from. So we have a cooling compressor for cooling combined with a resistance coil. That's one type. It is less expensive, but it uses a lot more electricity. Or we have another type called heat pump. It's used for both heating and cooling, and it is more expensive, but there's less drain on the battery for heating and cooling. This increases your range if both were hooked up to the same size battery. That is the heat pump versus the resistance coil. We also have different tire technology. We have low rolling resistance tires. They have harder rubber, and this uses less energy in driving, okay? So less resistance to the road. Because they're a hard rubber, they get very poor grip on ice and snow, so snow tires are a must for all electric cars. And buses, in fact. Okay, fuel consumption and cost. The EV fuel consumption, an average electric car would cost about $7.20 worth of electricity to drive 200 kilometers to Toronto. An average gas car would cost about $18.80 to drive the same 200 kilometers. So the cost of electricity to drive an electric car is approximately 1/3 the cost of a gas car. This is significant for business where the major cost of operations is fuel, such as taxis, buses, delivery trucks, and transport trucks. The cost of ownership. The purchase price of an electric vehicle is about $6,000 to $17,000 more than comparable gas cars, mainly because of the price of the battery. They have very, very low maintenance costs. No oil changes, no mufflers, virtually no brakes, and no motor maintenance, just windshield wipers and tires. The brakes last 7 years or 150,000 kilometers between brake jobs. The motor is good for 25 years or 500,000 kilometers before it needs any repairs. The fuel costs 1/3 of that of an average gas car, which I mentioned just a minute ago. And after 2 to 3 years of ownership, the total cost of owning an electric vehicle is pretty close to equal the total cost of owning a gas car. After that point, the EV is cheaper. So if you own your EV for 5 years or even 10 years, it's going to be a lot lower cost of ownership than a gas car. As battery prices drop by about 10% a year, and they are a major cost difference between gas and electric cars. It's expected that by 2025, the purchase price of electric vehicles will be about the same as gas cars. Since electric cars are both maintenance-free and cheaper to operate, sales of gas cars will plunge and sales of electric cars will dominate. At least this is what we hope. This is what we call the tipping point, the point where sales of electric cars will outnumber the sales of gas cars. At that point, the auto manufacturers who have ignored electric cars will be left behind. Environmental concerns. So these next 6 slides are courtesy of the City of London. The City of London is developing their London's Climate Emergency Action Plan, and electric cars are a big part of that. If you're interested in this, these are the 2 websites. One is getinvolved.london.ca/climate, and you can email them at climateaction@london.ca. Okay, so when we look at the local greenhouse gases, guess what is number 1? Personal vehicles. Okay, number 2 is housing. Number 3 is commercial buildings. Number 4 is freight and fleet vehicles. So if you add personal and freight and fleet vehicles, you're way up there above anything else. Okay, when you look down here, you see that methane from landfills is significant, that railways are significant, but way lower than personal vehicles, way lower. And that even London Transit is way lower than personal vehicles. Okay, so if we combine housing and personal vehicles, the average person's greenhouse gas production is 50% from how we move and live. So where is the greenhouse gases produced in the average household? Vehicle gasoline, 49%. Natural gas home heating, 31%. Natural gas water heating, 9%. Methane from food and organic waste and garbage, 7%. Everything else is pretty small compared to those. Get involved. So if you're interested in getting involved with London's emergency action plan, climate emergency action plan, then you can look on the website I gave you. And the city has proposed a long-range greenhouse gas reduction goal of net zero greenhouse gases by the year 2050. So now, how you can get involved depends on how much time you have. Quickly leave a comment or share an idea online, 2 to 5 minutes. Complete a feedback form, 5 to 10 minutes. Review the discussion primer of potential. Review this discussion primer of potential climate actions and comment, 30+ minutes. And build a plan for London using something called e-Democracy Network's Climate Action Simulator, 45 minutes or more. Okay, so if you have time, those are some of the things that you can do. Okay, so thank you for caring about climate action. Okay, and now go nudge your neighbor. Okay, this, by the way, these are pictures of the Fridays for Futures marches for climate action that occurred here in London. You can see the cenotaph on the left one, and you can see the downtown church is right across from the City Hall in the right hand. Metropolitan United. A big shout out to Jay Stanford and the City of London for those last 6 slides and the information on London's Climate Emergency Action Plan. Environmental concerns of EVs. The manufacture of an EV has a large carbon footprint and a larger carbon impact than a gas car. And that's because of the CO2 production from producing the batteries. However, the biggest EV advantage is the amount of CO produced in operating the EV is much lower. So where does our electricity come from? Okay, from Hydro One or London Hydro. So our gas production, our electricity production is 61% nuclear, 25% hydro, 7% renewables, and 7% natural gas. The natural gas amount varies. It can be as low as 10% or as high as 30%, but 27% is a good average. So natural gas is the only method of production of electricity used in Ontario that produces CO2. So only 27% of our electricity production in Ontario produces CO2. There are environmental concerns over the methods used to produce the lithium, cobalt, and other minerals that are used in the manufacture of EV batteries, and how these toxic materials are disposed of at the end of a battery's life. Currently, about 75% of the materials in EV batteries can be recycled. By the middle of this year, Tesla will be producing cobalt-free batteries, so one less thing to worry about in recycling the batteries. Transportation, on average, makes up about 35% of all greenhouse gas emissions. Switching to electric vehicles could reduce that by 90%. Okay, so you're going down to about 3% from 35%. 36% of EV owners bought an EV for the environmental impact because they wanted something that was more environmentally friendly. The rest probably were because of the lower cost of operation. Now, the environmental impact of electric cars versus internal combustion engine cars. Okay, and we have a video for you on that. So I'm going to see if I can get this to run full screen. And this tells you basically the difference between electric cars and gas cars from the cradle to the grave, covering everything.
So the argument goes electric vehicles don't pollute, but the electricity powering the electric vehicles does pollute.
Yep, we hear you.
Some even say it pollutes even more than a gasoline or petrol burning car. If we're going to look beyond the EV itself to the energy that powers it, shouldn't we do the same for the fossil-fueled combustion car? So what goes into producing the fuel that you burn in your car every day? Gasoline or petrol starts as oil, on average 5,900 feet below the surface of the Earth. A great deal of oil is extracted using what is called a pump jack. Pump jacks don't run by themselves. In most cases, they use electricity. It takes, on average, 9,960 kilowatt hours of electricity every month to drive one pump jack. To put that in context, that is enough electricity to power a Tesla Model 3 for 34,860 miles. In the United States, there are 4,350 oil wells using pump jacks. Estimated electricity use for these wells is over 4,300 gigawatt hours a month. That is a lot of electricity, and that is just to get the oil out of the ground. If we use that electricity to power electric vehicles directly, it would be enough to power over 15 million electric vehicles for a month. That's just US oil wells on land. What about deep sea drilling? The most common way of powering an offshore oil rig is with a diesel generator. An average oil rig generator uses 20 to 30 metric tons of diesel per day. The electrical equivalent to this is 300,000 kilowatt hours. There are an estimated 1,470 offshore oil rigs in the world using over 1.3 billion kilowatt hours of energy a month. All this oil pumping combined would be enough to power 19.5 million electric vehicles per month. This is just from the energy used to pump the oil out of the ground in the US and offshore. So not only does the fuel pollute when we burn it in our cars, we are also using a huge amount of electricity just to pump the oil that makes the fuel. Combining the pollution from the tailpipe emissions with the emissions generated to pump the oil out of the ground is not a pretty picture. And pumping oil is not clean. Millions of gallons are spilled into the ocean every year, causing havoc for fish and other wildlife. Then that oil needs to be transported. Most of the oil is pumped through pipelines. There are over 337,000 miles of pipeline in the world, carrying most of the 100 million barrels a day we consume. These pipelines use pump stations that use even more energy. Oil is also shipped. The oceans are unregulated as regards emissions, so ships use the cheapest, dirtiest fuel possible to keep costs down, making them one of the largest pollution sources on the planet. Shipping is responsible for an estimated 1 billion tons of CO2 per year, and 10% of that is shipping oil. Because these tanker ships pollute so much, many countries do not allow them to operate near their coastline, so they have to be towed into port where the oil is transferred to a refinery. Refining oil takes a huge amount of energy and generates even more pollution. Refining is done by heating oil up to 800 degrees Fahrenheit or 420 degrees centigrade. Heating 100 million barrels of oil a day to these temperatures requires an enormous amount of energy. Heating this oil generates so much pollution, refineries create a serious health hazard anywhere they operate. Refineries are the #1 pollution source in many major cities around the world. It is so bad that people living near these refineries have a marked increase of lung disease. Once the oil has been refined, it is transported to fuel stations in diesel trucks, creating even more pollution. Then this fuel is burned in cars and trucks right in our cities where we live and breathe. These cars and trucks have internal combustion engines that are extremely inefficient. 70% of the energy from burning fossil fuels is wasted as heat, while only 30% goes to turn your wheels. So after we use all that electricity pumping oil out of the ground, refining it, transporting it, we then waste 70% when we burn it. Fossil fuel production is an incredibly dirty, inefficient process from start to finish. When we contrast all this to powering an electric vehicle, the difference is very stark. Electricity does not need to be pumped from thousands of feet underground, transported with trucks or trains, or pumped along pipelines. It does not need to be shipped overseas. It does not need to be refined, and it is not polluting where we live and breathe. Even if electricity is produced from burning coal, the power plant is far away from population centres, transferred over power lines, keeping any direct pollution away from the population. And if the EV is powered with clean energy, it is clean from start to finish. In the United States, 47% of electricity comes from sources that emit no CO2. In Europe, it is even better at 56%. And the percentage of clean energy is growing every year as coal and gas plants are being replaced by renewable energy sources. So what about the lithium used in EV batteries? Lithium is a metal that is mined in the deserts of Australia, China, Argentina and Chile. Besides being a key ingredient in batteries, lithium is also ingested as a medicine for bipolar disorder. Much has been made about the environmental impact of lithium mining, but this is all a little bit overblown. Australia is the largest producer of lithium in the world. If there were any major environmental problems with this mining, some Australians would be talking about it. But what is Australia really talking about when it comes to pollution? Oil refining. Yes, oil refining is creating a much bigger environmental risk than all the lithium mining going on anywhere in the country. Australia is not a very densely populated country. They consume 1% of the world's oil supply and only refine 1/4 of the oil they consume. But they mine 50% of the world's lithium. So a country that only refines 1/4 of 1% of the world's oil and mines 50% of the world's lithium, the biggest contributor to pollution and risk to human health in Australia is oil refineries. That does not even take into consideration the drilling, pumping, transporting and burning of this oil. This is just refining it. The more you look into it, the argument that battery production is somehow as bad as the cycle of fossil fuels is ridiculous. All the lithium mining in the world to date has not done anything like as much damage to the environment as just one major oil spill. So, what about the batteries? What happens to EV batteries when they get old and are discarded? When no longer practical in an electric vehicle, the batteries can be used as energy storage to power a home or business, giving them a second life. And when they're no longer any good for this, they are recycled, broken down to recover the valuable metals in these batteries to be used in the next generation of electric vehicles. It looks a bit silly to use so much electricity to pump oil out of the ground, create tons of pollution transporting and refining it, to finally waste 70% of it burning it in our cars when we could simply use that electricity directly to power electric vehicles, eliminating the pollution from refining and burning oil in inefficient internal combustion engines. It is obvious when you look at the big picture. Oil production is a dirty, wasteful process, especially when compared to the alternative powering EVs with renewable electricity.
Look at that. That doesn't look too good. Now it looks a little better. I think I'm going to try this one out. Okay, yeah. Oh, nice inside. Wow. Oh, sorry. Wow, this thing's fast. See ya.
What can you do? One of the last obstacles preventing many people from going electric besides misinformation is people who live in apartments and condominiums with shared parking. Many of these residents have no way to install a car charger. If you're a lawmaker, sit on a city council or a local council, if you serve on the board of a housing association, if you own rental property, you can do something to help. Vote to install car chargers, or indeed install them yourselves in car parks or on the street, so people who live in apartments can have a place to charge their electric vehicle. There are companies that even offer ways for you to make a profit from these chargers. Support the taxing of fossil fuels and using the subsidies to support the shift to electric vehicles. With the right incentives and political will, change can happen very quickly. In Norway, they have made a huge shift to electric vehicles in a very short time. Electric vehicle sales in Norway have reached over 50% of all vehicles sold. Support the installation of solar panels wherever possible. Going solar is now cheaper than buying electricity from the grid and starts paying for itself from day one. And if you are fortunate enough to own your own home, get an EV and install solar panels. You will save thousands on fuel and electricity and have the peace of mind knowing that you are not contributing to the horribly dirty oil and gas industry. The day when our cities are clean of sulfur dioxide, carbon monoxide and other toxic chemicals and particulates emitted from tailpipes and oil refineries can happen. We have the technology to do this now. Supporting this transition to electric transportation will bring this day closer to fruition. We hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching and stay clean.
Now, obviously, the person who put that together is a Tesla owner. His name is Tim Cox Tesla, and you can see he has a is very biased towards electric vehicles. We're just about done. We're going to have some time for questions at the end as well. So, all right, so that's the environmental impact. Just take us up to full screen. So the health effects of greenhouse gases. If all cars and SUVs in the Greater Toronto Hamilton area roads were electric, this would prevent 313 premature deaths per year and provide 2.4 billion per year in social benefits. Newer, cleaner trucks would prevent 275 premature deaths, and again, similar social benefits. Electrifying all public transit buses would prevent 143 premature deaths and similar social benefits. A single EV replacing a gas-powered car brings approximately $10,000 in social benefits shared by everyone, not just EV buyers. This does not include healthcare costs, so the true benefits are likely much higher. If all SUVs and public transit buses were electric in the Greater Toronto and Hamilton area, this would reduce over 8 megatons of greenhouse gas emissions per year. This is the equivalent to the output of 2 coal-fired generating plants, or about half the reductions needed to meet Ontario's 2030 carbon emission targets, or about 16% of all greenhouse gas emissions in which were in 2017. So how are we doing with solving the climate crisis by driving electric? Well, so far, not very well. Here is an article from the IEA that says that in 2020, the decline in oil use, thanks to electric vehicles, was completely canceled out by the growth in SUV sales over the same period. So we have such a thirst for honking big SUVs, the bigger the better, and 4x4 pickup trucks, that the electric vehicles we're buying now still is not enough to cancel out the greenhouse gases produced by the growth of SUVs over the same period. Here's another one from Global News. Why are Canadians reluctant to buy electric vehicles? And I'm going to show that one as well.
Electric vehicles are gaining traction in Canada, but not fast enough to meet the federal government's own targets. It aims to have 10% of all light-duty vehicle sales be electric by 2025 and 100% by 2040. Through access to information requests, our chief political correspondent David Akin has obtained internal government polling that sheds some light on what's holding back Canadians from buying more electric vehicles. David?
The federal government has had incentive programs to get Canadians into both electric and hybrid vehicles since Stephen Harper was Prime Minister. But so far, at least, those programs are not showing the success that everyone wants. Just 2.6% of Canadians own a plug-in electric vehicle. Only 3.6% own a hybrid. Most Canadians, 80%, still own good old-fashioned gas or diesel cars. This data is from an internal government poll done in late November for the Prime Minister's Department, the Privy Council office. So what's been holding consumers back from buying an electric vehicle? Answer, they're just too expensive. That was the #1 reason cited by 43% of those surveyed by the PCO. Lack of infrastructure, charging stations and the like, was cited by 15%. And concerns about reliability was an issue for 10%. Now, the Trudeau government has been offering subsidies of up to $5,000 for those who buy a zero-emission electric vehicle, and it's in the midst of a 5-year, $130 million program to build more charging stations across the country. The PCO poll suggests the government could ramp that up. A majority of voters in every province, including Alberta, support the idea of federal cash being used to help get consumers into electric vehicles. Just over 71% nationally like the idea, including 54% of Albertans, while 78% of Quebecers and almost as many in Ontario and BC gave the idea a thumbs up. And so with such strong support in the election battleground provinces of Ontario and Quebec and British Columbia, the PCO, and by extension the Prime Minister's office, knows they've got a vote winner right here. And so you should expect to see federal cash for electric vehicles front and center in this year's spring budget. Donna?
Okay, David Akin in Ottawa, thank you.
Full screen. There we go. So that was from Global News. So, and there, this is just a summary of it again. 43% thought that they were too expensive, 15% lack of charging infrastructure, and 10% unreliable. So 75% of Canadians polled support the electric vehicle incentive program, and I think we're going to see greater incentives in the next budget. I hope we do anyway. The pros and cons of owning an electric vehicle. The pros: lower ownership costs over the life of the car and money from the government. The cons: limited choice. These are mostly smaller cars. They have very few minivans and very few full-size SUVs. Most of the SUVs that are available, all electric, are crossover SUVs or smaller SUVs. The other con is resale value. Part of the reason is that electric cars are still advancing by leaps and bounds every year. Each year, the newest cars have more features than the last ones or longer range. And so when you go to sell your 3-year-old or 5-year-old electric car, you're not going to get as much of it for it as you might expect. What can you do? Number one, urge your city to invest in electric buses, trucks, and charging infrastructure. Speak with your local elected officials and write letters to the editor. If you or your friends are in the market for a car, buy electric. The federal government offers rebates of $5,000 for electric cars, as well as incentives for installing electric vehicle charging stations at your home. Enlighten your friends. Share the amazing electric facts you've learned. Encourage your friends to find out how much carbon pollution they could save by going electric. Okay, and as Kelsey mentioned at the beginning of this, she is taping this presentation, and it will be available on the Reforest London website for anybody to view afterward. So if you have any friends that are interested in seeing it, they're certainly welcome to. Okay, and the reference. So Kelsey's going to post the references on the chat. And that is it. Thank you very much. You've been a great audience, and I've certainly enjoyed doing this presentation, and I thank Reforest London for asking me to present tonight. We will have time for questions, so if you have questions, you can put them in the chat.
Okay, thank you so much, Don. Thank you everybody for coming too. I know 8:30 was kind of our end time, so if you have to head out, thanks for sticking with us. If you want to stay longer to ask some questions, feel free. And yeah, so we'll stay as long as any questions do come in.
So the federal and provincial rebates only apply to new cars. Okay, it's up to $5,000, and it depends on the size of the battery. So a plug-in hybrid may not get the full $5,000. It might be somewhere between $2,500 and $5,000. But a battery electric vehicle, if it's over about 30 or 40 kilowatt hours, it will get the full $5,000 rebate. So, but there is a rebate. I don't know if you remember, I showed you the website of Plug and Drive. So Plug and Drive have a rebate. It's not a lot, but it is $1,000 for used vehicles. Okay, and all you have to do is you have to sign up for their course called EV 101. Okay, and you can do it even after you buy your car. And that money doesn't come from the government. They have a benefactor. It must be somebody in Toronto who has interest in the environment, and he is paying those $1,000 rebates. It does not come from the government. It comes directly from Plug and Drive. Okay, so the next one is about insuring an EV. Now, I think probably the biggest determining factor in insuring your car is your accident record, and the other is your age and sex. Okay, so the fact that you've gone from a gas car to an electric car really, for me, did not make that much difference in my insurance costs. Okay, but it depends on where you live. And you live in the Metro Toronto area, insurance rates are higher in general than they are in London. Okay, so but if you live in a rural area around London, you might find that your insurance costs may be lower than they are in London. Okay, so the cost, I think that covers that one. Thanks, Peggy, for your question. And the rebates, thanks, Carrie, for your question on rebates. The next one is from Casey Pullum. Hi, Casey. What are the costs of installing a home charging station? Okay, now it's going to cost about $500 to $1,500 for the charging station itself. and it's going to cost about another $500 to $1,500 for the wiring. Okay, the wiring depends on the distance from your panel to where you want to put your charger, and also it depends on the size of your panel. Although if you have a 100 amp panel, I don't think there's much problem with you putting an electric charger on it. They're using different methods of calculating what the capacity of the panel is nowadays. So if you have less than a 100 amp panel, so that might be the people, for instance, in Old North or Old South, you might have to replace your panel. And that would be about an extra $2,000. So I've given you a range because I can't tell you exactly. I know that you can get a good electric charger for $500 or $600. You don't have to spend $1,500, but there are some people who'd like to know exactly how many kilowatts they used, and what they like to sit down and calculate the losses of kilowatts from the charger to the car and all these sort of things. So when you have all those bells and whistles on, it costs you more for your charger. Okay, as far as trying to keep the cost down for a home charging station, on the panel end, we have panels that can share, or we can share an electric circuit. So for instance, if your panel isn't big enough, you can put what they call an AB switch on the line that runs to your charging station. And the AB switch would be on, for instance, a line that goes to your dryer. So if you mostly charge overnight, but you don't use the dryer overnight, you can switch the dryer off and the charging station on, and you get your charging overnight using the same circuit as your dryer. And you turn it back to dryer the next day and you can use your dryer. Okay? And you don't have to buy a bigger panel that way. Okay, so Paul Prince, will the underbody battery panels stand up to our salty winter roads? And basically the answer is yes. And they actually do not recommend that you undercoat or oil the bottom of an electric vehicle, only because it could leak into the electronics and cause problems, or it could be sprayed up into electronics when you're around the motor. It could be sprayed up into electronics and cause problems. So no, they're no worse than any other car. And certainly I haven't heard of any electric cars who had any perforation in their panels or perforation in any of their frame or anything like that made the frame weaker. Okay, so thanks, Paul, for that. All right, so Molly asks that she needs a new or used car, but actually rarely drives. Do you think it would be still worth considering an EV? I would say if you rarely drive, like my daughter-in-law, she only drives about 2,000 kilometers a year, which is about 1/6 of what the average person drives. You might be better off to put your money into a heat pump to go along with your gas furnace and a heat pump water heater. Then you could reduce your greenhouse gases and not spend a lot on the car if you're not driving very much. Okay, so I hope that answers your question, Molly. Yes, so Carrie asked about a home station. A home station is a level 2 charger. Okay, your car comes with a level 1 charger, and there are some people, myself included, when I first got my electric car, I just used the 110 volt outlet that was in the garage for a while, and I did well on that for about 3 months. Then one day I had to do a lot of errands on a Saturday morning, and by the time the morning was over, I was out of charge. And so I couldn't do any more errands in the afternoon. I had to go home and charge. And because I was using the level 1 charger that came with the car, it was going to take about 8 or 10 hours for it to charge. So I was done for the day at that point. So having a level 2 charger at home is a big convenience. And that is the type of charger that most people install in their home. Okay, so the next question is from Pierre Holden. Where do you see the gas tax being recovered as electric vehicles reduce the consumption of liquid fuels? Well, you saw the percentages. We're about 2.5% and about 80% are gas. Okay, so if they only made a little bit off each liter of gas and put it toward electric car charging stations, other infrastructure, they would be able to double or triple the infrastructure we have now. So now, one of the things you noticed in one of the videos was about Norway. Okay, now Norway has, now they're selling, and this is just brand new information. Okay, they only came out in December, that they were up to 50% or greater electric vehicles in their new car sales. Okay, so the way that Norway did it was not with a gas tax, and unfortunately, our government has gone the gas tax way because I think that's the way the Americans are going to go. But the way to do it is with a tax on new and used gas cars, the purchase and sale of new and used gas cars. So luckily, Norway doesn't produce any gas cars in their whole country. They're all imported. So what they did was they put an import duty on diesel and gas cars instead of putting a gas tax on the gas. The import duty was pretty stiff. It's what, I don't know if you remember, we used to have a gas guzzler tax when you're buying, if any of you bought new vehicles before, especially 20 years ago, we used to have a gas guzzler tax. And so it would be similar to a gas guzzler tax. It would be anywhere from 2 to 4 or 5,000. Now, if people are spending 75,000 on a Lincoln Navigator SUV, 5,000 to them isn't that much, but that 5,000 would go a long way to building out infrastructure so that those who want to have electric vehicles can have them. And maybe we can build electric Lincoln Navigators. Okay, so gas tax then would be used to build infrastructure and also for rebates on electric vehicles, okay? Because the rebates, in my opinion, are not enough. We used to have 7,000 in Ontario. Then we went to 14,000, which was great. And then Mr. Ford, in his wisdom, canceled that totally. And for a year, we had nothing. And then the federal government came in with 5,000. It's not adequate in order to get enough people buying electric cars because of the price differential. Okay, so the underbody in electric cars is very smooth. Okay, you have to remember they want to protect that battery that's under there. So there is a metal shield that's under your car. It's like a skid shield. And in the early days, Tesla found out that they had to put bigger and thicker skid shields on their cars because a piece of metal fell off a truck and a Tesla ran over it and it punctured the battery, caused a fire. And so they decided they had to put thicker metal on the bottom. So the metal on the bottom underneath the battery pan is pretty thick. Okay, so I don't think really anything's going to puncture it, certainly not snow will. And so it would act like a sled in deep snow because of the metal that protects the battery pack underneath the car. Okay, I think that has covered all the questions. Does anybody else have any new questions they want to add to the chat? No? Okay. Well, you've been a great audience and your questions are great. And I think maybe Kelsey will post my email. Do you want to post my email? Okay, so if anybody has any questions afterward, I'd be more than happy to answer them. London Electric Vehicle Association has a Facebook page. So you're welcome to like our Facebook page and follow us. If you follow us, then you will find that I post usually about 5 things every day, although yesterday and today I didn't post much because I was busy putting this presentation together, but I usually post 5 things a day on electric vehicles. There is so much new stuff coming out on electric vehicles. It's even hard for me to keep track and keep up with it. So, but I do post there, and you're welcome to go onto Facebook and add yourself as following us, and you'll get all the new information, including even like the first delivery of a certain brand of car here in London, things like that.
I recently started following your Facebook page, and even if I just see the headlines, I think, oh, wow, that's so cool. It's really inspiring to see how much stuff is going on, and it's interesting to know that you're the mastermind behind it, who just is single-handedly doing a lot to advocate in the community.
One and only, yep. So I do post things as well about batteries or anything else that indirectly affects the climate and other things that indirectly affect electric cars. I have a personal Facebook page too, and I do post on my personal Facebook page. So you have my name. You can look up my personal Facebook page and follow me, like and follow me if you want. I post on climate on my personal Facebook page as well.
Okay, well, thanks for all the questions, everyone. That seemed to go really well. Thanks again, Don. And yeah, have a great night. Yeah, I'll send out the link and I'll reshare all the references again too to make sure everybody has them.
Okay, thanks a lot. Bye now.
Okay, have a great night.